إذا تبي تخلص صار لا أبغى تكمل القهوة
Thank you so much. I know that some of you haven't finished it, but that's okay. We'll work on it together. Some of these are far more complicated than others. I actually think the first one is one of the more difficult ones. Thank you. I think one of the more difficult ones is the first one. So let's go through this together. How much detail is necessary when building the foundation of a story? This is something we didn't talk about.
Yes, we talked. It depends on how familiar is it to the audience.
Fantastic. Very, very good. If the situation in the story, if the setting and the characters are extremely familiar to the intended audience, all you have to do is make a quick sketch. If the situation, remember our checklist is very simple, unusual or complicated, we need a little bit more exposition. Stephen King has a new memoir. A lot of the book I really didn't like, but there was one line that I actually liked, and he said that the exposition starts in the pen of the writer and ends in the mind of the reader. And I really like that. The idea is to get the reader thinking and let them finish the picture. But your job as a storyteller is to get the picture started. Not to complete the picture, right? But just to get the picture started. I think that's really important. Anything else, any other answers to this that you would like to share? How much detail is necessary?
Yeah, we have said that it should be brief generally, but it should address four things, that is what, where, and when.
Correct. This is such a good point you make, because remember at the beginning I was saying some people are saying in 140 characters you can write a story?
Yeah.
To me, this is not possible because we have all of these steps to make. Can you write a story the way that people use the word story now? Yeah, of course. If you're going to call a moment a story, yes. But if you're going to call this a story, you can't do it in that because the exposition has to accomplish all of these things. One last thing I want to say about your answer is that you could argue that the inciting incident, the break in routine, is the beginning of the story. Therefore, if you spend too much time on the container, sometimes you find that the audience's attention wavers. It's possible. In fact, let me ask you one thing. In fact, remember I said before that you can take these and kind of slice them up and deliver them at different times? In most books and movies, what's the very first thing on the page or the very first thing on the screen? Which of the subsections that we discussed? It's usually the inciting incident. The break-in routine is the first thing. And then later on, after the break-in routine, we're going to find out about the foundation and so forth. Okay? Why do you think they do that? To grab the audience's attention, because the break-in routine is something usually very dramatic, right? Okay, great. You want to take the second one?
The revelation section does three important things. What are they? We've discussed this today. The revelation does three important things.
Yeah.
What are they?
Defining the problem,
Defining the problem, yes.
leads to the turning point, and sets the opposite forces.
Sets the two conflicting forces in his presentation.
There's one more. You're right about the turning point, but there's one more small detail.
The break-in routine is the first one.
Yes.
Break-in routine.
For example, imagine a story where every day I go into the coffee shop and I order a latte, right? But in the story I'm telling you, one day I order a cappuccino. Okay, it's not important. Technically it is a little bit of a break-in routine, but the revelation is going to show that that break-in routine is not important. So the job of the revelation is going to be to point out how significant that small break in routine was. Okay. So the three things are: break in routine is important, problem is introduced, forces of conflict are started. Correct. Okay, this one I think is challenging, the third one. How important is, do you think, for the hero to succeed or fail at the obstacles? Let me ask you a question. Is the hero failing throughout the story or succeeding throughout the story? This is difficult. Somebody said failing? Failing and succeeding. Okay, interesting. What do you think?
The general trend should be
I agree with you, but I think one is a little heavier than the other.
succeeding more than failing.
I would argue that the hero is failing more than succeeding, and here's why. Think about it. Think about it like a video game. The hero is going from here, from the problem, to the solution, correct? And a video game will have like these little levels, correct? So basically, the hero is getting to the next level, but from the hero's perspective, she thinks she's going from here straight to here. She doesn't know that these levels are ahead of her. We know because we're playing the game, and we know that this game has 8 levels. But she thinks she's going all the way here. So yes, it looks like a little victory, but actually it's a failure because she didn't solve the problem. You know, in Super Mario Brothers, there's like 32 levels, but he doesn't know that. He thinks that he's going through the first level and that's the end, right? But little by little, he realizes there's more to the adventure. So it feels like a victory for a moment, only for the hero to actually realize that he's failing.
Minimum 3 times to fail.
Minimum 3 times to fail.
I'm not going to fail. It's boring too much.
And here's the punchline of this. What is the villain doing this entire time while the hero is failing?
Winning, staying at his peak, maybe.
The villain is succeeding. Correct. So every once in a while, we check in with that meteor headed towards Earth, and we see it's picking up speed, and we see it's bigger than we thought it was, and we see it has all these other little satellite meteors that are also headed towards Earth, right? So the villain is picking up speed, the hero is continuing to fail. This is the pattern. The problem is getting more intense, the hero is struggling to solve the problem. So whoever said failing and succeeding, you're right. But ultimately, it's failure that drives the story forward. WD-40, right? Right? They made WD-17, that's a success. But they were aiming for WD-40. So that means there's an ultimate failure. I think this is the hardest of all 5 questions on the page to answer.
Question 4. There are, generally speaking, 2 types of resolution to stories. Can you think of what they are?
Bittersweet.
A bittersweet.
So it's sometimes it's happy ending, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a mixture between.
Good point. It's almost like like you're giving a specific type of ending, but it's Akshay is asking for kind of 2 umbrella categories.
Anticipated and unanticipated.
That's another way of thinking about it.
It's getting warmer.
Any other guesses?
Winning or losing. Winning or losing.
Yes.
It's again happy. Yeah, so open and close.
Brilliant. This is it.
This is it.
What is it?
Open and close.
Have you ever heard of the open resolution and the closed
Closed
resolution?
resolution. We didn't think about that. The closed resolution is within which the happy ending and the sad ending both come in. There is a proper resolution to the story. The change is perfectly demonstrated, and the new normal has been established. That is the closed resolution. Whereas the open is where it is left to the audience to interpret.
The story stops at the climax. There is no
Forces
resolution.
meet. You don't know whether they won or they lost. There is no answer.
It's up to you to fill in the answer.
I hate that resolution.
Yes, most people hate this type of resolution.
The open resolution.
You know why? Because you know you don't have time, and you try to put time to to learn something and to find out that's the end, the wisdom in that story.
Commercially speaking, less than 2% of stories, commercially speaking, less than 2% of stories have open resolutions for this very reason. Most people find it very frustrating because the storyteller is basically promising you indirectly that you will find out what happens at the end, only to pull that out from you at the last second, right? Sometimes it works, and if we had more time, we can talk about the specific circumstances in which it works, but 89% of the time, 98% of the time, we
Even
have
at
the result.
movies, sometimes I say I watch the movie, then I said, God, I wasted my time watching this movie. I could have watched something else.
Right.
I find something out of it, you know?
Correct. Well, the secret is, and we didn't talk about subplots and things like that, the secret is to close some loops and to leave other loops open.
Yeah.
We don't find out what happens here, but we did find out what happens with the main problem of the main story.
Okay.
And the fifth one, I think this is a challenging one, but an interesting one. Is there a difference between a speech and a story? I'm going to say something very briefly, quickly, which is that a lot of times there's a story inside a speech. But overall, looking at the two things, is there a difference between a speech and a story? And if so, what's the difference?
What is different?
What would you say is the difference?
The story,
Yeah, go on.
the story is a vehicle of change,
Okay.
but the speech just maybe information.
Fantastic. That's one way of looking at it. Absolutely. I didn't even have that in my notes here.
And speech mostly happening right at the time, which story could exist without, speaker or anything.
Great
So it
point.
could Be by itself.
Very, very good point.
Story coming with stage, but speech it's only something public.
Ah, I like that. I never thought about that. I think you're right. A lot of times speeches are given when there is some type of acknowledgement or award, right? So when we came up with this question, we said, you know what, speeches are delivered when something goes right. Stories are part of something going incredibly wrong, right? Stories are when something goes counter to our expectations. And speeches are when something goes in the direction of success. We just
Not
talked about
necessarily, because for
Not-
example, when we had the airplane crash, there was
Correct.
speech from the manager.
Yes, but what you're
which was
acknowledging
very-
is the story inside the speech. These days, most people who understand how to give speeches will include a mini story inside. Speeches, I would argue, is when something tends to go right. Stories are when something tends to go wrong. But there is some differences between them, some hybrids, especially if you include a story inside a speech.
Or
I think the
speech-
points that you
or
guys
speech
make-
inside the story.
No, I don't think so.
Well, there's a story going on, and the hero will put a speech in the middle of the story.
But now you're going back to this earlier definition of a story where everything is a story that we talked about at the very beginning, you know?
So who includes who? Or what?
Speech
You'll-
may include story.
Yeah, you
or
almost
story.
never see a speech inside a story unless it's the hero pontificating about something. But these days, most people who get advice, like for example, I do coaching for TED Talks, which are basically speeches. I of course tell my people that I work with to tell a story inside the speech to make it a good speech. So I think that there are some hybrids between them.
Yes.
But generally, you win an award, you give a speech. Something goes terribly wrong, you have a good story. Often I say to Akshay, I was like, you know, hey, if things go well today, it's great. If things go wrong, we have a great story. You know, so that's part of the
But the
experience.
coach in the change room sometimes gives a speech after they lose the game, or they give them the speech before they win the game.
That's true, the story continues.
Like William Wallace's charge to the army in Lionheart.
For sure.
Usually, there will be some perking up and,
Braveheart, yeah.
you know, Braveheart. Yeah, Lionheart, Braveheart.
Close enough.
In Braveheart. So I think we could call that a speech.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. But you know, I just wanted to differentiate because I promised you at the beginning we would talk about the differences between communication and storytelling and all these types of things. This is a moment when we can start to think about that. All right, we have two final things that we want to do with you, but before that, we want to, yeah, I'll take half, you take half. We just wanted to give you a summary of basically what we do. So Akshay and I do, this is a shorter version of what we normally do, so we had to select the things that we wanted to talk about. But we wanted to give you a summary to take home with you You're welcome to share with colleagues about what exactly we do in case you're interested in seeing us again. We would love to see you again.
One more.
Feel free to shake one, pass them along.
Oh, sorry, I was
I was just waiting. I was just waiting.
I was actually, I was out of this place right for the moment. I was thinking about. I'm so sorry.
You wouldn't believe the number of important things that we didn't have time to talk about. It's almost painful for us to do it on such a superficial level because we love to get deeper into it. Correct, it's a crash course. Maybe if we had more time, we can get into some of the subtleties. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have an extra.
Okay, perfect, wonderful, thank you. So we just wanted to make sure that you had a little bit about the background before we move on to the next thing. Okay?
Can we have some? That's the story, see?
Okay, go ahead.
So, remember the floats that we did initially? The 3 floats that you had? And now you can start to see the patterns that may emerge from it because of the arc that is with you. So what we want you to do now is to use one of those floats to write a story. And not I wouldn't call it a story per se, I would call it a proto-story. More like an outline of what the story would be if you follow through with starting from that float. From that seed.
Language.
So yes, of course. So you have the seed, now you also have the structure for what the plant is going to look like at the end. See if you can take 10, 15 minutes to grow that seed into something, And we're not expecting you to finish the story. I always tell my students that one of my stories took me 10 years to write, so I'm not expecting you to write it in 10 minutes. But I have a feeling that once we've introduced this structure to you, some of the pieces of how you can use this seed will suddenly start to pop into place. That might not have popped into place 2 hours ago when we started. If you feel blocked, or you're saying, okay, that sounds very nice, but how am I supposed to start?
We would steer clear of the word formula, but this is a sort of framework that you can use to encapsulate your entire proto-story nature.
Is that included here?
Sorry?
Is that included here?
No, that is not. You can see it.
Well, that's why we're leaving it up here. We're going to leave this up
We're
while
gonna
you
leave
look
this
back
up
at
here.
your floats. You can use this structure.
It's pretty much the same structure. This is in the arc form, this is in text form. So everyday routine, break-in routine, identify the problem, then you start tackling the problem, then there are obstacles, then you question the strategy, you take a step back, you make the critical choice, and the final attempt is the climax, and the establishing the new routine is obviously the resolution of the entire story. This is pretty much the same arc, just in textual form.
Does this make sense?
Yes. Can we write it in Arabic?
Yeah,
Yes,
I was asking about that. You doesn't have to have certain plan for we're supposed to write it down.
Yes, and no one's going to look at this. This
Yeah,
is just for you.
I can share.
Yeah, no,
It's a
this
fine.
is-
Don't worry.
But the reason we wanted to include this is because this structure is very fresh in your mind right now. So tomorrow you can look at the question, no problem. But I promise you, you'll make more progress if you do it now because we just talked about the structure in the past 2 hours. I'm sorry you can't see the board. Oh, but you could. Yes, feel free to.
There's no translation going on.
Yeah, you can join us. Why are you sitting there?
You will translate the Arabic story which we write. ترجموا لنا القصص اللي بنكتبها بالعربي.
And now putting, into the frame to create a kind of story.
They don't have a student yet, but the idea is that if you use this thing, you will get these benefits. The new normal will be here. Correct. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes. Poverty is the foundation. Correct.
About 10 things that we're going to talk about, but 2 of them are this. We're going to talk about 5 of the most common mistakes that storytellers make. And we're going to take you through those and correct them or give you some alternative strategies. And we're also going to talk about writing and how to make your, thank you so much, writing and how to make your writing more effective. And we're also going to go a little bit deeper into each category. I think I just said about 30 minutes ago that it's painful how superficial some of these were. We're going to talk a little bit about going to the next level and how to make them stronger. And just like this question that was just asked, how do we deal with situations where maybe we have the first half of the story, but we don't have the second half of the story? That's something called the vision. So for example, if you're working at a company and you have a product, you don't have the resolution yet, but you believe that if we introduce this product, we're going to get these results. What do you do with when you only have half of the story? How do you make that work? So we're going to talk about some of these permutations and some of these exceptions to the rule in these cases in tomorrow's workshop. I think you're going to find it even more enlightening than today, because we're going to get a little bit deeper. Okay, so we hope that you'll join us for tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
And now, one more thing.
One last thing is that we conduct so many of these workshops. Every workshop, Michael and I also are learning and growing and trying to share our knowledge as much as possible. So we want to just go around the room and talk about one thing that we have learned out of the workshop today, or unlearned from the workshop today.
Put it on the whiteboard, right?
Oh, good idea. Yeah, good idea.
Actually, we will request to do that.
Okay, so instead of sharing it with
Sharing it
us,
with
please.
us, you can please write it on the whiteboard. We'd love to read it.
Yeah, if no whiteboard writing, we are refused.
Oh yeah, there's no lunch if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I remember that. That's what I was telling you. I'm always thinking for the best.
So thanks all of you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you, guys.
So don't forget to write something.
Yeah. Yes.
You are still there.
What is actually planned for today?
This one.
Ah, okay, good. What time? We're having lunch or? Oh, okay. Tomorrow morning. I'm leaving at 9 o'clock. My plane 9 o'clock. They changed something, but I didn't get it. I love traditional food. Yeah, this is my first time in Bahrain. I don't know. I'm sorry I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I still have this feeling that it reminds me about Egypt. Actually, Egypt for like a couple years, like 10 years ago. Some of the architecture, and actually it's not about culture, it's pretty similar, but we have differences. But it's mostly about the sky color, and the smell and the sound. That's how special, I went to I went to the desert. We went, not yet, no. I didn't have a chance. Yeah, but I would like to. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, actually, and it's great. I need some, some culture, like, that organizing something.